Seahawks fans. The preseason of 2014 is almost over, and the regular season is about to begin. Welcome 12s, 12th man, 12th lady, and Hawks Nation around the world. This is your show, 12 for 12s, hosted by Paul Beyer. That's me, folks. This is your show, 12 for 12s, 12 topics for the 12th man, 12th lady, and every little 12 around the world. I'll tell you, folks, I'm pretty jacked up. I'm pretty excited. I can't tell you enough how this team continually impresses me. Are you pumped up? I can only guess that you're pumped up. My gosh. These guys look unbelievable. It seems like last year just ended. I mean, honestly, it really seems amazing that we're at this point in time. Was it just me, or did the Hawks beat the holy living you-know-what out of the Bears this last Friday? The trends, which we'll cover a bit later, I'll get into some of the numbers, but they are very, very, very good. As we get ready for this season, I'm going to call something. I'm not going to say it right now. I'm going to say it next week. I'm going to give you my forecast for what happens this season. But I'll tell you, tune in because you're going to want to hear it. Three preseason games down. One more to go this Thursday versus the Oakland Raiders, owned by Lloyd Christmas himself, otherwise known as Mark Davis, Al Davis' son. Boy, that should be interesting. So, how do you think it's going to end up? I don't think it matters. It's not about winning and losing. It's about what happens on the field. It's about our players getting better. It's about those ones and how they're progressing, which, again, I'll get into here a little later. Have a great show this evening. I'm going to be joined by none other than Keith Myers, the NFL forecaster, blogger, writer, opiner extraordinaire. He is one of the best out there, and I'm real happy to have him. It just seems like every time I get a chance to talk with Keith, there are so many good things that we get to talk about, and he really knows his stuff. So I'm really looking forward to that. There's going to be a lot of things we'll get to a little later, and again, that's going to be a fun conversation. So, I talked about this ALS Ice Bucket Challenge last week, and I just wanted to kind of give everyone a little bit of an update because I think the numbers are astounding on this. I have done it myself, and I know the video is up on my website, 12for12s.com. But for those that haven't seen it, please check it out. It's on the post page and part of my Twitter and Facebook posts that I do every day. But the numbers are unbelievable. People have really gotten around this, and again, just last week, a week from today, they had just raised a little over $11 million. Everyone and their mom and parents and this and that were still doing it, but it's the numbers, it's that real dollars that come in to help support the challenges of finding a solution, a cure for ALS. It's amazing. So let me just give them to you. They've now raised over $80 million, an additional $70 million and change, actually, since last Tuesday, the same day that I broadcasted last week. Just awesome to everybody, to the children, and so many kids. I mean, I don't know if you've seen all those videos, but it's not adults, it's not grandparents, it's young children seeing the good, getting excited about what is this? I want to do it, even though they squeal, roll around, and this and that after they get the cold water on them. They are being. It's being impressed on them. And in my case, my little circle, it all started from a little 6-year-old, my buddy's daughter, and Corinne, which I'll give a nice shout to. It's how these things go. So with that being said, I just think, again, everybody that's doing the work, Peter Frady is out of Boston, who suffers from ALS, an ex-college Boston College baseball player. He suffers from the disease. He's the one that started the Ice Bucket Challenge last year, And just a shout out to him. And my gosh, I hope that we are able to help you in your fight. But it's just amazing. One of my friends, actually, one of the people all my challengers have now completed it. Dom Toucan Haig, who out in South Bend, Indiana, awesome little kid who I got to meet last year when I went out for the Notre Dame Oklahoma ball game, football. Brothers and sisters obviously were out there supporting him, but the little guy, they actually live on Notre Dame Avenue, just to give a little hint as to what kind of fans and who they support. But Jamie, his father, is from out here. His wife, Gia, they really great people, and it was really cool to see them obviously get the little guy wet in front of the camera. I won't share that because obviously they just shared it with me. It wasn't done on Facebook or anything like that, but it is really cool, and I gave him his nickname, Toucan, and it's obviously sticking. It's now been almost a year, so Dom Toucan Haig. Love you, brother. It goes to show you what Americans can accomplish when we come together. Again, we always talk about this, like, why don't we do this more as Americans? And I'm not going to get into this any broad commentary on our society or anything like that right now, but I just get impressionable for all of us to think what we can do when we all get behind, get excited about something, and see the results. We're seeing that right now. The Seahawks, for gosh sakes, you don't think they have to come together to win a championship, win a Super Bowl title last year, and what they're doing right now? Do you think they have to come together? You bet they do. They have to come together wholeheartedly in every way, shape, and form. And really, they have to buy into the mantra. We've talked about that at length. Pete Carroll's mantra. They have to buy into it, hook, line, and sinker, in order to accomplish what they're doing. So again, amazing what we can all accomplish when we our mind, our hearts behind something. Oh, so much to get into tonight. So much to get into tonight. I've already let you know about Keith Myers, who will be joining me. Talk obviously Seahawks, NFL, and everything in between. The whiz man himself. Also, I obviously, as always, will provide my commentary, the rest of the Hawks 12, and a little tidbit here and there. But we'll get into that. First, quick this. Oh, wow. Big news. Big news, actually. The NFL came out this afternoon and paid the Seahawks $300,000 for excessive contact during minicamp. Now, for those that don't know, the teams are allowed only so much contact during practice. You probably have noticed that they don't wear pads every day, let alone much at all. Really rare now, and that's due to the collective bargaining agreement as last time agreed upon between the players and the owners. It's interesting that we can only see these guys in a game that has so much violence behind it, where they're, I guess, expected not to embrace one another. Offensive line work. I mean, you have to touch someone. You have to work on your technique, and a bag is not the real thing. So, again, this is something that I'll be honest with you. This is no big deal. The biggest deal out of this is it's not the money. The money is, meaningless. I hate to say it, but it is to the team and the organization. It's the lack of they actually do mini camps. So that's included. I actually assume Russell and the gang will figure out how to make that up somewhere along the line, so I'm not going to get into worrying about it. But it's really interesting. The real issue, I think, is the league not being flexible with the rule itself. They actually found out about this and started looking into it. This is kind of interesting because of the Richard Sherman, Phil Bates, call it interlude. They had at the end of, actually it was one of the last minicamp practices, and when these guys are going up against one another, fighting against, especially Phil Bates fighting for a position against the best corner in the game, that's a tough job for him, and he's going out there and fighting for his life. I mean, you think about all of us, we'd be doing the same thing, and not the fight aspect, but the competitive aspect. And to have the situation lies, it just seems silly. Again, NFL, kind of like, what's important here? Why aren't we focusing on the big things? But this to them, again, it's in the agreement. again, it's part of the rules, so it is what it is. The fine will be dispersed between the coaches. Pete Carroll will get obviously a large share of it. I don't think he's too worried about it. We don't know exactly how much he makes, but it's in the ballpark, I think, assuming of in that $10 million range. Now, moving on, Heath Farwell. Now, Heath Farwell, he's a special teams captain on this team. Obviously, somebody who is he's been a large presence on this ball club. He's the guy that carries out the 12th man flag to every ball game. Middle linebacker back up to Bobby Wagner. He was placed on the IR today and will go up to his
groin that he injured in this last preseason game against the Bears. This bodes well for Brock Coyle having an opportunity to make this team agent out of Montana. It's not good for Heath. However, he still will remain under club control, but he will not be able to participate this season. He will be out for this entire season. Two other IR moves were made today as part of the 75-man roster cutdown, which I'll talk a little bit more in detail with Keith a little later. But offensive guard C.J. Davis as well as cornerback A.J. Jefferson, both were also placed on the IR. A.J. is probably the big surprise here, being the signee, very athletic player, corner out of Minnesota that we picked up in free agency. Jefferson is a surprise because he played very well. Had a pick in that first game against Denver where he had an injury to his sprain to his ankle. But I think with Jeremy Lane and how he's played so far, especially this last week against the Bears, I think, and Thurl Simon as well, it shows, one, that the team wants to have control over him in one shape or form with AJ, which I would definitely think would want to have, but also that they feel pretty comfortable with the guys they have now that have kind of the young guys that have kind of come up to fill those shoes and be that depth addition to the LOB. So Jeremy and Thurl, good job. I think it obviously means you're going to definitely be on this team. No worries there. But AJ, obviously get healthy, get that ankle all healed up, and hopefully you do continue to stay here, and it's not a buyout situation that it gets to treat him, and maybe try to find a way to get on another ball club up there. I think you're someone that has some talent and potential to stay here. Bobby Wagner is back at practice this week. It's still unclear if he'll play versus the others, but Bobby coming back from his hamstring injury, and all we care about is Bobby being ready for the regular season now. Pete Carroll was ranked. Oh, well, this is kind of an interesting story, but he was ranked today by a project, call it, Mike Sando of ESPN put together to rank all the NFL coaches. He had about 30 NFL insiders as part of this committee, and Carroll number 2 overall, second to only Bill Belichick of the Patriots. Obviously, Bill Belichick's a stud. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. And Pete Carroll, obviously being seen in the eyes of the guys that work in this area all day long, and I'm not just talking about writers, I'm talking about actual GMs, other coaches, things like that, as one of the best, is right there on that same level. And they separated the coaching groups into different tiers. And FYI, this isn't an ESPN Insider article, so if you can't read it because you don't have that access, let me know, and I'll see if I can maybe figure something out. But the bottom line is that he's ranked very highly. Jimbo, Harbaugh, or Nemesis to the south was ranked in the second tier and 8th overall. Sean Payton was in the first tier, and that kind of rounds out that first group. But I think hey, Pete Carroll coaches differently. He's got his own mantra. It's very how do I say? I won't say John Wooden, old schoolish, even though he's very youthful, exuberant about how he works with the players. He's a player's coach, but he also he wields a heavy hammer. So it just goes to show you what Pete's doing out there, and it's being recognized around the league. Percy Harvin mentioned a few days ago that Russell Wilson reminds him of Brett Favre. Well, I'll be honest with you. I think Russell is actually more like with a Joe Montana, and as a young player, as when he started in the league, was a very mobile quarterback. Got out of the lots of bootlegs, lots of rollouts, and then would throw on the run as part of the beginning of the West Coast offense under Bill Walsh there in San Francisco. I think that is what I think of when I think of Russell Wilson in that lineage. He's a gunslinger type, and that's actually not Russell. He's not going to throw a ball into tight coverage or risk of the turnover. I think it's evident by his first 2 years in the league with 52 touchdown passes, only 19 interceptions, as opposed or compared to the best, as everyone is trying to say, with Peyton Manning, 52 touchdowns over that same period of time, but 45 interceptions. It's not even close. One of the great things of Wilson is his ability to take care of the ball. He does not make those same mistakes. And again, I'll knock on wood, just because I think that's the right thing to do here. But hey, I know that Percy had that with Minnesota for years and faced and played with Brett Favre, thinks of Russell in the same light. It's rarefied air, folks. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's just keep this thing rolling. It's opening commentary time, and again, after I get done here, I'll go to a commercial and then welcome, a little past the bottom of the hour, my good friend Keith Myers, and I do have a lot of really cool stuff to talk to him about, so stay tuned for that. All right, tonight's opening commentary is called Hitting Strides. How about them Hawks? Boy, are we looking good. I mean, seriously, folks, we are looking good. I mean, the thing about the preseason is it's too easy to get overconfident. I have talked about this over and over. The results of these games is absolutely meaningless. It's meaningless. It does not matter. What's more important is to really look at how the ones play against other ones. Those are the guys that are going to be playing in the games. And then also to evaluate the depth of the team by seeing how the rest of the team, I call it the 31, how are they matching up out there on the field? The Seahawks ones currently are scoring 2/3, or let's just call it 67 tenths of a point for each play they run. I want you to think about that for a second. They're scoring 67 tenths of a point for every play they run. In relation to their opponents is when it gets crazy. They're scoring about 17 tenths of a point per play they run. We're literally scoring a little more than 4 times what other ones against our ones are per play, points per play. Well, it tells you a couple things. One, their ones aren't out there very much against us. I mean, we're getting them off the field, okay? And two, it shows you that we're being extremely efficient with the ball. I think that's an amazing statistic to think about. We're more than four times more efficient than our opponents. And again, that's with a good portion of our number ones on defense not even in the lineup for the majority of this preseason so far. To say the Hawks are running close to peak efficiency already is an understatement. We haven't even warmed up. The formations, the plays, the diversions we throw out there will only get harder to defend. Additionally, our defense will get healthy and scheme. We'll actually start scheming to beat these teams. We haven't even done that. We have pretty much a base, either man or zone. That's it. We haven't even started, folks. We haven't even started. I'm giddy. I really am. I am giddy. I'm excited. And you should be too. So now what? I mean, how do we keep this rolling, the emotional roller coaster? Because it's not a roller coaster. This thing is rolling up, man. We are going uphill. We haven't even gotten to the top. Well, we got the Raiders. The Raiders. They're going to be dessert this Thursday. They're not going to be dessert for the number ones. They're going to be dessert for the guys that are trying to make this unbelievable ball club. The guys that are trying to be part of this 31 that I talk about.
I'll tell you, the ones, I don't even want them to show. I don't even want them to come. I would rather they stay back here and put the feet up on the couch, watch the game, relax, maybe order a pizza. That's what I'm thinking. Heck, maybe go study some film. We all know Russell, if that was the case, Russell would be at the facility watching film. That's what he does. Still, I'm excited about Thursday. I really am. I'm excited. We'll finally find out if Terrell Pryor is going to make this ball club. I think that's interesting. Also, I think the wide receiver linebacking and offensive line position groups, there's a lot of things still left to be decided there. A lot of interesting little niches on this team. For the most part, it's pretty much decided, but there are some position groups that are going to be able to still battle some things out Thursday. If I was out there talking to this team, my message would be clear. Keep doing what you're doing. Stay day-to-day and focus on your goals. What's important to you? It's already been proven that they work when you do this. The bottom line is the mantra is real. It is real. It's only real if you believe it, and they believe it, and that's the bottom line. We haven't even started to hit our strides. All right, I'm going to go to take a quick break here, come back, get going with the first part of the program, and then have Keith Myers join me, like I said, a little bit after the bottom of the hour, about 7:35 or so, and that's, again, for those that are listening live. First, though, I want to mention one of our sponsors. Why wouldn't I? Sam's Tavern. Hey, are you heading downtown to watch a Mariners game or just meet up with some friends? Well, think about hitting Sam's Tavern on 1st and Pike in Pike Place, the home of the Red Robin hamburger, great eats, great beer. I don't want to say good. I want to say great, and awesome people. Take a load off. Enjoy your time at Sam's Tavern. You'll be glad you did. Check out the Bloody Mary Bacon Masterpiece. I always mention it, and why? Because it looks delicious. It's a Bloody Mary. Great. You had me at hello. And then you put a burger on top of it. You put a stick through it, and you put it in the Bloody Mary, and it's that. It's right there. You got a burger and a Bloody Mary. I'm sorry, but that just, I want to go down there right now. Should I just wrap up the show and go down there right now? I'm thinking about it right now. But I won't. I won't do that to you. How can life get much better than that? Well, not much. But, hey, go down, visit Sam's Tavern on 1st and Pike in Pike Place. Tell them that Double OT sent you. You never know what's going to happen. Maybe you get a couple extra fries out of the deal. All right, I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, get into the Hawks 12. And obviously, like I said, a little bit after that, bottom of the hour, Keith Myers will be joining me. So looking forward to that. This is 12 for 12's Radio, Tuesday, August 26th. And your host, Paul Beyer. Let's go out to break with a little win-win-win for my buddy Norb Quealy over there on YouTube at NorbCam. See you in a few.
We're the Seahawks, the blue, green, and white. Total domination wins the fight. He's taking control, the one that we trust. The name is Russell Wilson and he's dangerous. We're bigger, faster, stronger, louder than yours. We want the ball, hell yeah, we're gonna score. Hold on to the rock, cause the intensity is hot. You know the 12th man will be rocking the night. Who's gonna hit ya? The Seahawks. Who's gonna outrun ya? The Seahawks. Who's gonna blitz ya? The Seahawks. What's important now? Win, win, win. Sack ya? The Seahawks. Who's coming at ya? The Seahawks. Who's gonna smack ya? The Seahawks. What's important now? Win, win, win. We on a mission to prove we're the best. This year we're gonna win the NFC West. We running the ball, we setting the tone. He's Marshawn Lynch, but we call him Beast Mode. Our defense is a temple of doom. Boy, you're going down, there's a legion of boom. First down, move the chains, now we're taking you out. Team up, go high, bring it to the high. Who's gonna hit ya? The Seahawks. Who's gonna outrun ya? The Seahawks. Who's gonna blitz ya? The Seahawks. What's important now? Win, win, win. Sack ya? The Seahawks. Who's coming at ya? The Seahawks. Who's gonna smack ya? The Seahawks. What's important now? Win, win, win. Hit ya? The Seahawks. Who's gonna outrun ya? The Seahawks. Who's gonna blitz ya? The Seahawks. What's important now? Win, win, win.
everybody. This is 12 for 12. It's your host, Paul Beyer. And for any of you out there that are actually listening to my show and not able to watch the Mariners currently, they are up 1-0, top of 2, which is pretty cool. So good to hear us beating the Rangers tonight. Hopefully we can get even in the series and still go for the win overall in this series. So, oh boy, here we go. All right. Hawks 12, let's get rolling here. We're going to kick off here with the first topic of the night, which was the Bears breakdown, this last game against the Bears. I want to talk about the offense. I shedded some light with about the differential in points per play, that numbers I ran, and how really dominant we have been and just getting more and more dominant. Just to give you an idea, in the Bears game, we scored 88 tenths of a point, 88 tenths for each play we ran, points. 88 tenths of a point per play we ran. Sorry, my mind, where was it going? Almost, if you really want to just break that down, we almost scored a point per play. A point per play. Now, to compare that against the Bears, they didn't score any points. So they're ones, and this is just ones, by the way, folks. I didn't include anyone else in these. So I just looked at the majority of the ones playing against ones. And in our case, the Bears had a 0. So, I mean, that's pretty dominating. And that statistic has only gotten better. I mean, just to put it, I'll just give you a little quick. I did obviously run it for the San Diego game. And in the San Diego game, we were at 54 tenths of a point. And compared to the San Diego's 0, their number ones did not score. So, very, very, very solid. Okay. Well, where do you start? We look good. We really do look good, folks. I mean, Russell Wilson looks like he's seeing the game in slow motion. And that's the thing I've been watching really specifically. O-line, Russell's comfort in the pocket, comfort outside of the pocket. This is a guy, unlike his compatriots, the guys that are at that same year out into the league. Andrew Luck, as good as Andrew Luck is, RG3 at a much more diminished level, and even what they might call more mobile quarterbacks, like a rookie like a Johnny Manziel. Again, Russell Wilson's light years ahead of these guys. Light years. Because he knows what to do, when to do it, and make sure he puts his team and himself in the least, how would I say, the least of the worst area you would want to be in. The O-line is road grading. They are just playing better and better. I mean, Tom Cable talking about J.R. Sweezy and James Carpenter, the new slim James Carpenter, after all that work with Mike Barwas in the offseason, being potentially the best guard tandem in the NFL. Well, they're sure looking like it. They are just looking mean, and they are running through guys. The tackles, well, Justin Britt's getting better, and that was one of those things I wanted to see. I wanted to see Justin Britt get better and better. He has improved, and he's improved light years each game. Now, Russell Okung was a little rusty, I would say, but he still was rusty Russell Okung is still a lot better than, a Paul McQuiston, okay? Let's just put it that way. The wide receivers are getting open. I mean, they're open every time, and the ball's being delivered perfectly. I mean, and including Percy Harvin. I'm going to get into Percy Harvin a little later with Keith, but it looks literally like he could go to the house every time he touches the ball. And, did I mention Beast Mode? I mean, Beast Mode had a series. Went down, scored a touchdown, no biggie. No big. Marshawn Lynch is going to be ready to go this year. I know a lot of people are thinking he might have more of a diminished role. I think the bottom line is carries. He averaged a little less than 1 carry, or a little bit more than 1 carry less last year, for going from 22 down to around 20, a little over 19, around 19. That, I think he's going to be closer to 19 this year. So if he's getting at least 19 carries a game, and then they do take him out in blowouts, which could definitely happen, and then you'll see Christine Michael and Robert Turbin get obviously a lot more carries. And both of those guys, I think Robert Turbin especially, is going to be just fantastic. I'm no worries whatsoever about either of them. But we'll have the beast ready for the postseason, and that's when you want him. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves, folks. 35 plays, 31 points on 6 drives in this last game against the Bears. They ran the 2-minute drill one time, and they scored a touchdown. It just looks like they're unstoppable. And this is, again, against the ones. Just a couple of key stats to use. Again, how Russell spreads the ball around to so many different receivers. Kearse, Harvin, Michael, Baldwin, Lockett, Richardson. These are all just Helfet, Zach Miller, Turbin. I mean, that's not a number. That's not a line you'll see when you talk about a Colin Kaepernick. Okay, he's only thrown to maybe 5 different receivers or targets. Russell Wilson will give it. Every single guy on the team will get something, and that yardage will obviously be spread out. From a standpoint of passing, Russell Wilson 15 of 20. Again, very efficient. And 2 drops in there that weren't his fault. He hit Luke Wilson for a touchdown. He dropped the ball. He was hit hard, but hey, next play out, Jermaine Kearse he caught that same ball. Yards, 202 yards, 10.1 average. That's a very, very good average per throw and catch. And his quarterback rating, which is just disgusting, 140, 2 touchdowns, 140. I'd say that's pretty darn good. Let's go ahead and swip it over to the defensive side of the ball. Again, not a lot to get into other than they shut him out. But what I looked at is I look at pressures on the quarterback. Again, the Bears are a heavy, heavy passing team. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. I don't want to look at them because I don't have a lot of time, to be honest with you. But they were passing the ball pretty much about 70% of the time. We got to the quarterback 3 times in the ball game. We had tackles for loss of 4. We had passes defended 7, and we had 6 QB hits and 2 sacks that we got definitely on Jay Cutler. Heath Farwell, and Brian Schofield and Cassius Marsh all got to the quarterback. Those are your guys. But this is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about 2 guys. I want to talk about Byron Maxwell's play to catch up on that deep post ball to Alshon Jeffrey. And I want to talk about real quick Cliff Avril, but we're going to touch a little bit more about this with Keith here in just a second. But on Byron's play, Byron Maxwell, it looked like he was beat. And he was, for all intents and purposes. Jay Cutler threw a perfect ball. No one did anything wrong from an offensive standpoint. What you want to talk about here, and what nobody outside of this market, this region, has really discussed on this play, is that Byron played it perfectly. He put his hand, he was beat by a step, but when he caught up, and he had great closing speed, he put his hand in a position so that when Alshon started to bring a ball into his body, he could pull it out. And that's exactly what he did. Nobody did anything wrong from a Bears standpoint. It just was fantastic defense. Skip Bayless, everyone's favorite guy here, he talked about how Alshon dropped that ball. No, he didn't drop the ball. Byron Maxwell ripped it out of his hands. That is what needs to be pointed out. Flipping this around real quick before I go over to Keith here. The ability of Cliff Avril and how much better he's getting, he looks unstoppable on the outside. He is actually playing with tackles in this league, and I see a huge, huge year for him. The fact that these QB hits, these pressures, we are going to get a lot of sacks this year. If you haven't, again, looked at fantasy, think about picking up the Seahawks defense. They're going to be pretty good. All right, I got to get to a break here, come back with Keith Myers. Looking forward to that discussion here real shortly. But before I do that, let me discuss Enlighten, the next big thing, Enlighten Strips. I have found the next big thing. Enlighten Strips, this is an amazing product that I actually personally have used. Helps provide from energy boost to if you're busy a day or you need just recovery, electrolytes while you're working out. Enlighten Strips do work. I have used the sleep strips. I actually took them as prescribed by them. You just like Listerine, those Listerine strips, you just put them on your tongue. They dissolve real easy. And I'm one of these guys that's, because of my back issues, I've had some potentially issues trying to go to sleep. I wouldn't call it insomnia. I just call it trying to be relaxed, and comfortable. And it's been something that I've suffered from for years, last few years. And I just started taking these to try them out, and they work. I was always able, after reading for about 30 minutes, able to go down, no issues. Whether you're looking for strips to help with appetite suppressions or maybe providing antioxidants, I think these light strips can help you out. So they're affordable, convenient, no sugars, carbs, or calories. Go to enlighten.com. That's ENLYTEN.com, and see what's right for you. Check it out. Enlighten.com and Lighten Strips. They are the next big thing. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break. We're going to come back with Keith Myers. Looking forward to our talk here tonight. And again, this is 12 for 12's Radio. Your host, Paul Beyer. We'll be back in just a second.
We loudest. Our stadium's the most crowded. We the loudest. We loudest. Current record holders, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm a true 12, bleeding blue and green. Come get your eardrums beat up on, that's guaranteed. Here is it, you really? It isn't fair, it seems. Fair weather's never fair to residents of the here and see. Adam, some can disagree, stuck in disbelief. You mess with 112, you messing with the whole family tree. These other teams don't stand a chance up in the clean. We operate off facts, know what a player thinks. Sticking together pound for pound, so we don't give up. Losing, winning, true sportsmanship, we always showing love. Never going out without a fight when we throw them gloves. State to state, we shut them down till it's over, bruh. Shouts to Big Low, painted hard kid and ball the seat pimp. Mama Blue, Mr. Mohawk. I know you see the rooster, Mr. Seahawk. I got you, we the loudest, raise the roof up. We loudest. Our stadium's the most crowded. We the loudest. We loudest. Current record holders, and there's nothing you can do about it. Yo, 12th man, let them know that we the Super Bowl champs. Tell your mama, tell a stranger, bring a friend. Everybody yell out, we all in. Come on, we all in. We all in. We all in. We all in. Tell your mama, tell a stranger, bring a friend. Everybody yell out, we all in. We loudest. Our stadium's the most crowded. We the loudest. We loudest. Current record holders, and there's nothing you can do about it.
We're my lady 12s, yeah, we known to get it crackin'. Messing up the heads, guard your brain to get a fracture. They like what happened, each opposing fan demanding answers.
How Seattle gets so loud?
The 12th man is madness, known for the passion, lights, camera, action. Rain, hail, sleets, know the 12's gon' be standing. Cars in the chasm, 12s are bragging everywhere across the planet. It don't matter what city we land in. Interviewers get distracted by the amount of attention that we drawing after. It's a new chapter, you can doubt if you want. Bet that doubt is a chip, it only makes us louder. Yeah, we make noise in the stand, shouting we the loudest. Turned up to the max, so you know we bout it. Bout it, no limits, we get rowdy. My team's rising up to the challenge, while your team is lousy.
We loudest. Our stadium's the most crowded. We the loudest. We loudest. Current record holders, and there's nothing you can do about it. Yo, 12th man, let them know that we the Super Bowl champs. Tell your mama, tell a stranger, bring a friend. Everybody yell out, we all in. Come on, we all in. We all in. We all in. We all in. Tell your mama, tell a stranger, bring a friend. Everybody yell out, we all in.
All right, we are back on 12 for 12. Your host, Paul Beyer, here. And now we are going to be joined by our guest this evening, a very special guest, the whiz of the NFL, all-knowing Seahawks man himself, Keith Myers. Keith, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good after that intro. That was kind of generous. So.
Hey, I gotta do what I gotta do, man. You know, it's all about pumping up everything. You know, it's constant publicity stunts, right? You there?
I am. Sorry, you were cutting out there a little bit for a second. So, okay.
So, hey, we're going to talk about a couple of things. Big topics, obviously, 75-man roster cuts made today and so forth. But real quick, before, I wanted to get your opinion on the fine, penalty, punishment, whatever you want to call it, that just came out today regarding the $300,000 too much contact during minicamp situation. Just your thoughts on, is it a big deal? And especially the loss of the 2 practices, which I think is probably the biggest part of the punishment. But just to get your read on the situation.
It's not a big deal. The team loses a couple of practices next year, which might be a problem next year as far as getting the new players that they add in the early in the off season next year up to speed and that kind of stuff. But it's really not that big of a deal. It's one of those things that happens. Pete Carroll runs his practices kind of hard. Guys get going. This, from my understanding, is that the penalty came from a few plays between Richard Sherman and Phil Bates, where the two of them started going at it, and it's supposed to be a non-contact practice, and they were definitely pushing it a little too hard, and then ended up, it becoming where they were throwing a few punches and that kind of stuff because it got a little heated, and but that's the type of team this is. They go out, they work hard, they compete hard. It's just who they are, and this kind of stuff's happened. And I'm kind of surprised that we haven't seen this more from other teams as well. But, it's really not that big of a deal. Pete Carroll talks about walking that fine line between, making sure they're within the rules, but trying to be as competitive as possible and really pushing people. And occasionally they step over the line, and when they do, they're going to get punished. So I think they'll back off a little bit, next year and, kind of tweak the way they run things a little bit to try and make sure they don't get penalized again, but it's really not a big deal.
Yeah, I played college football and pretty high-level football, so I understand what it's like to practice without pads and still really be physical in practice. And I think this proves, if anything, that attorneys are the ones making these collective bargaining agreements. They aren't players, they aren't coaches, they don't really know what's happening out there. I mean, it's a physical game. And, just the linemen. I mean, you have to work on your technique. You can't just hit a bag all day. You got to actually put your hands on another guy. So it just seems a little silly, but I agree with you. I don't think it's that big a deal in the big scheme of things. Well, let's get into the go ahead.
I was going to say, people got to remember that these guys aren't robots. They're competitors. They're professional athletes for a reason. I mean, they're driven in so many different ways, and you line up one-on-one against someone, they're going to go at it. They're going to compete. They're not just going to go through the motions. It's not part of who they are. And to have the rules set up in a way where you're just expecting it to be kind of a glorified walkthrough, and that it's just never going to escalate into any kind of contact, I think is a little bit. It's just not something that you should expect. It's just never going to happen that way.
Especially when you're fighting for your livelihood. In Phil Bates' spot, he's trying to get a job. I mean, it's crazy. Well, without further ado, let's get into this 75-man roster cut situation. And to me, not a lot of surprises here, really. But I just want to get your read on some of the moves that were made. The Heath Farwell's kind of interesting that he's on IR for the season. And the A.J. Jefferson was another one that I was like, whoa, he's gone for the year now, but we still obviously control him. Just your thoughts so far on, or were there any surprises really in your thoughts looking at the cuts that were made?
No, there wasn't really. I mean, we knew the injured players were going to go on injured reserve so the team could keep them. The only real surprise for me, and it wasn't really that much of a surprise, was Thomas Wolf, just because we knew that Jefferson was going on injured reserve and that Pinkins was going on the non-football injury list, which is going to keep him out for 6 weeks. So the fact that they also cut Wolf, who's their cornerback, meant that might be a little shorthanded in that going into the fourth preseason game where the starters probably won't play, or they'll only play one series. So I kind of figured they'd keep him around. But at the same time, he was already cut once this offseason. So when you're cut early in camp and then brought back, chances are pretty slim that you're going to make it past that first round of cuts and the roster shrink. So, yeah, there wasn't really a lot of surprises. These are all guys that weren't going to be making the roster, and we kind of knew that early on.
You know, I was going to ask you that if any of the guys that were cut maybe had a chance to be re-signed, but after looking at the I did this yesterday for you, so when I was doing the questions, after looking at what happened today, I don't think there's really any question that any of the guys that were quote-unquote cut as opposed to IR or PUP that really have a chance to come back, so I'll just skip that one. Let's talk about Heath Farwell, and undergoing surgery. I'll be honest with you, I thought he got kicked in the old gonads. That's what I thought happened.
Me too. That's what I thought he took a shot and went down, and there were lots of jokes on Twitter about that he. What is it? They said that his injury should be listed as swelling, and that kind of stuff. And I was not expecting it to be serious, and then all of a sudden, you hear Pete Carroll talking about how it's a major injury and it's serious, and he's going to have surgery and a really long recovery, and I'm like, wow, that was just really not what we expected. So
crazy, but there's all kinds of stuff. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to get into bringing up ideas or thoughts of what took place around that area. That's stuff off limits for guys. But here's the thing: Brock Hoyle is probably the guy that benefits the most from this, and here's a guy that's been playing really pretty darn well over the first 3 preseason games and in camp. Do you think? This linebacking group is deep, and there are some other players, not just Brock Hoyle, that could be difference makers. Corey Toomer, obviously everyone was talking about him. Do you think Brock Hoyle, one, makes this 53-man? And on top of that, who are some of the other linebackers that are kind of on the bubble that you think could potentially benefit from Heath not being on this team now?
I think that Coyle makes it because he's a middle linebacker, and without him on the roster, the only backup middle linebacker is KJ Wright. And so with Bobby Wagner, he did return to practice, but he's a long way away from being ready to play. And I don't think they want to go into Week 1 with the Packers with just one middle linebacker, because what happens if KJ Wright rolls an ankle and now they're stuck in the nickel because they can't, they don't have a middle linebacker on the roster. So I do think Coyle makes the roster for that reason. I also think that he had a really good chance of making the roster even before the Farwell injury, just because he has played very well in special teams and as backup middle linebacker, whereas Farwell is a special teams ace, like the captain, and his contribution there isn't valuable. But as a linebacker, as a defender, it can be kind of dicey with him in there. He just doesn't have the instincts and just doesn't do well, in there with the defense. So Coyle just gave them more versatility, and he's younger and he's cheaper, and I just really thought that they would go that way. But then, of course, Farwell is also the captain on special teams, so you got to look into that. So there's a good chance that would have played in. Of course, all of this is academic now since Farwell's on injured reserve. I think Coyle definitely makes it. After that, there's a lot of good linebacking talent on this team, and trying to keep it is going to be hard because there's just not enough roster spots. They didn't cut Marcus Downton. I think he'll probably be one of the guys that doesn't make it, but I would expect him to land on the practice squad if he clears waivers, although he might not. He might end up getting claimed down in Jacksonville. He's the type of player that would show some interest. And then you got to look at on the outside linebacker, you've got like Corey Toomer, who athletically is as gifted as anybody in the linebacking corps. He just hasn't played, and when he was a rookie, he showed that he lacked he lacked a football knowledge. He didn't always go to the right place and guard the right gap and that kind of stuff. He just really needed to learn the game, and he's been he didn't play at all last year. He missed most of his rookie year with injury, and he's spent a good portion of training camp injured. So he hasn't really had a chance to show that he's learned anything. But the team's going to give him every chance. I would expect him to play a lot against Oakland, just because if he can show that he has made those improvements, and they're not going to let him go. He's too athletically gifted for him to. But he, it's going to be questioned, because if he hasn't, or he doesn't get an opportunity to show that, you can't keep him around and waste a roster spot and cut somebody like Mike Morgan, who can contribute. It might be one of those cases where Torrey Coomer might end up with a infected hangnail and end up on injured reserve again just to keep him, because the team just doesn't want to. They don't want to see him go. But I'm not sure if the way the roster works out, if they're going to keep him. Another thing that might be a possibility, in order to keep both of those guys, would be for Bruce Irvin to start the year on the physically unable to perform list. That would keep him out for the first 6 games, and he wouldn't be able to practice with the team or play. But it would give the team some roster flexibility, and then once he was ready to be activated, by then, maybe someone else has gotten hurt. Maybe a guy like Coyle has rolled an ankle and needs to go on IR, and so then that would open up another spot for a linebacker. And so it would give them depth down the line. It's an option. It might not be a very good option, because you're talking about an incredibly talented player, and you don't want to see him not on the field. But it might be a way to keep all the names that they possibly can in Seattle for as long as possible.
The enigma that is Bruce Irvin, how he fits into this team, we're always wondering. Let's move on to the O-line. The offensive line cuts, really, there was just that one that came out today. It was C.J. Davis, I believe. I think it's going to be an interesting battle here for the positions. Gary Gilliam, a player that I really have liked. Again, another undrafted gem that we found through that part of the process the Seahawks do, like Brock Coyle. Who are players that are on this bubble, and how do you see them playing out with roster spots potentially?
Well, if you look at this, and to me, you have. I think Gary Gilliam has made it just because he's a tackle, and the team is a little short on tackles at the moment, and so I think he'll make it. And then after that, you've got 3 guards that are kind of competing for one spot. Kalen Hoffman, Stephen Schilling, and Greg Van Roten. I think it comes down to the first 2 of Schilling and Hoffman, and part of it is just its versatility. Hoffman is a guard; he can play tackle in an emergency. Schilling is a guard; he can play center. Schilling did not look good at all in the first preseason game. He's looked better in the last 2. He's still not been great, but the ability to be that emergency center is, that's the type of thing that Tom Cable really likes in his backups. He wants his backups to play multiple positions. That's why Alvin Bailey is a lot to make the team, even though he hasn't played great at times, because he can play 4 positions. So on game day, you don't have to keep as many offensive linemen active, because if someone gets hurt, you can plug him in anywhere. So it comes down to one of those 2. I would give the nod at this point to Hopman, because he's a little bit younger, but that's just personal preference, and I don't really know the direction in which the coaches are thinking at this point. But to me, it comes down. It's going to be one of those 2. It's going to be an interesting battle. Watch, because they'll be playing right next to each other for a good portion of this week's game. With Schilling will be playing at center and Hopman at guard. And just watch the 2 of them and see how they play off each other and what they do. It'll be interesting, because I think that whoever plays the best out of those 2 will make the roster, and the other one probably won't.
It's going to be physical down in there. That's one of the reasons I think this game has got a little. It's an interesting game to watch, I think, for especially the football nerds, because there are some guys that are fighting for their lives to make the best team in the league, and there's a lot to be said about that. And To make this team, that's something. But to maybe get cut, that doesn't mean you're out of this league altogether, because I think a few players on this team that'll get cut will be impact players somewhere else. Let's talk about Terrell Pryor. Let's just make it real simple here. Do you think Terrell Pryor is going to make this team?
I don't. I know a lot of people want him to, and I think after the second preseason game, there was this kind of thought that, maybe he can. Maybe he's going to show that he can do enough that he can make the roster. I don't think they will, because I think it comes down to, if you keep him on the roster, you have to cut someone else. And are you really willing to give up a guy like Corey Toomer in order to keep a third quarterback who will never play? The idea that he's going to beat out Jackson as the backup, that's not going to happen. If the Seahawks were if this was 2 years ago, yes, I could totally see him making the roster, because this is a team on the up, and you take the projects. But this is a team with Super Bowl plans, and if Wilson gets hurt mid-season and you need a quarterback to keep this ship going for 3 or 4 weeks and not let the team fall out of the playoffs, you do that. You put Jackson in there, because he can win you a couple games and keep keep things going. With Pryor, you can't guarantee that he can do that. You don't know what you're going to get from him, and so you take the sure thing over the upside. And I think that's what the team does, because they're in a position to compete for another Super Bowl.
I've gone back and forth on this, and I'll just say that I think it's less likely he'll make the team now because of, I hate saying one play, but the way he looked coming off the bench and doing what he did in this Bears game and just a few opportunities, it just looked like he didn't, one, expect to play, and two, what he did was he showed he wasn't mentally ready to go, and that's a total no-no in Pete Carroll's book. So that he's going to have to play off the charts, in my opinion, to now make this team, but that's just one guy's opinion. Let's move on to wide receiver core, the pedestrian wide receiver core, who now looks to be, greatly improved. I hope Chris Carter thinks they're greatly improved. What are your thoughts so far on this wide receiver group, and is it just, one, Percy Harvin's that good, two, Golden Tate wasn't that good, or three, Russell Wilson's the best quarterback in the league?
Can we say it's a part of all three?
I think that's why I said it, but that's just me.
Percy Harvin is that good, and I know that some people get tired of hearing it, and some people don't want to believe it, but he is just such a dynamic athlete compared to the other people at his position in the NFL. I mean, he's just that much better, and what he does all over the field just makes everyone better, because he pulls coverage and he keeps safeties off people. And you look at guys like Jermaine Kearse, who doesn't get a great separation, but you put him on one-on-one, and all Wilson has to do is throw the ball close, and Kearse can go get it over just about any cornerback in the league. But you've got to have him one-on-one. Well, Percy pulls the safety over, so you get Kearse one-on-one, so he can make the plays that he makes. So the wide receiver core is just better, because Harvin is healthy and on the field. And of course, it appears so far this season that Kearse has taken another step in his development. Baldwin is always making people realize that he went undrafted and how he should have been drafted. I mean, he just keeps getting better, and all that helps. And then you throw in a guy that hasn't put up much in the way of stats, but you watch the tape and it just, his athleticism just pops, and that's the rookie Paul Richardson. His speed is just scary. I mean, he may be one of the few people who's fast compared to Harvin, and teams have to respect that. They give him a 10 to 15-yard cushion, and he eats that up so quickly once the play starts. And there's just so much pressure put on defenses because of Seattle's speed on the outside with Harvin and Richardson that just opens things up underneath. It gets people moving early. It gets them running backwards, and then you see Curse come open underneath it because everyone's bailing out the back. It's just this wide receiver core, which I know was much maligned last year by analysts, including myself. It just the slight tweaks of adding or getting Harvin healthy and adding Richardson just made such a big difference. The one thing though that I do want to add is having Norwood been hurt. I haven't been able to get a good read on him. He looked so good before his injury. I really thought he could step in and challenge Curse for playing time and really push him. Then he got hurt, and now he's been out for most of camp. So, to me, that it's been a little disappointing not being able to see him in there. But hopefully we will soon. We'll get a better look at Norwood, and we'll get a feel for just how much he'll add to this wide receiver group.
My thought, just real quick, and we'll move on, but on Norwood, I thought they might put him on the PUP for the 6 games so that they could keep potentially Terrell Pryor. And then, obviously, that might go also to the linebacking situation, which we discussed, too. That might open up a spot. So, but Norwood, they expect him to be healthy, but, again, every time they say that, add 2 weeks. So it just seems like how they do everything down there.
With Norwood, he's actually not eligible for the PUP because he practiced early in training camp.
Thank you. I needed that.
Most people don't realize that because he's been gone for so long. But once a player has practiced, they're no longer eligible to start the year on the PUP list. And Norwood was out there for the first couple practices before he got hurt. So even though it feels like he's been gone for from the beginning, he hasn't. He did actually get a couple practices in.
And that's literally the case. I think he did practice 2 practices, and that's it. So, That's good to know. I didn't know that little tiny. I thought I had them all down. I thought I had all those little rules down, but that's important. Good to know. Okay, let's move on to. And this actually wasn't something I was going to ask you, so forgive me for throwing something out of nowhere. But I think you'll be able to deal with it nonetheless. This wide receiver core last year, Golden Tate led them with 64 receptions. Based on just watching these last few games, especially how they've utilized Percy Harvin, I'm really expecting, even though they say they're not going to change, more pass versus, less run or anything like that, I actually think that Percy Harvin's going to maybe get 80-plus receptions. I just want to maybe say that's an over-under number for you. Do you think Percy Harvin will have 80 more or less than 80 receptions?
I'll go under, but only because I expect him to miss a game or two, just because he's Percy Harvin. I would put him somewhere in the low 70s, 72, 73 catches, and that's with missing a game or two. So put him on pace, yes. Over 16 games, I think he'd have over 80. The thing is, you're going to put Harvin into the Golden Tate role in the offense from last year, and realize that Tate's got some great talents and some great gifts, and he does a lot with it, and the team really played to his strengths. But Harvin he's faster, he's more dynamic, and more importantly, he runs much better routes, so he'll get open for the easy pass in ways that Golden Tate didn't. Tate was great on broken plays. He ran the scramble drills as well as any wide receiver in the league. He's great at getting yards after the catch and fighting for those yards and getting into the end zone, things like that. But on the easy play, the 5-step drop, the quick in or the slant route, things like that, those aren't what Golden Tate does, because he doesn't run crisp routes, and he's not real great in terms of setting up the defender right before his break. And so he was never open when Wilson looked his way, where I think Harvin will be. And so you'll get we're going to see a more efficient offense, quicker passes, less of Wilson running for his life because none of the receivers were open, that kind of stuff, because Harvin will make that work. Hopefully we don't, as a team, they don't lose too much of the scramble drill and the things that Tate really did well, because with Wilson's ability to extend the play and buy time for his receivers, those receivers need to be able to find space and get open and that kind of stuff. And Tate was just so good at that aspect of it. So hopefully the team doesn't lose too much of that with that switch of getting Harvin in there instead of Tate.
I actually think the scare of having Percy Harvin in there in those exact situations will cause defenses to maybe have one guy always spying on Percy, especially when plays break down, and that's going to open up even other more options. So, I mean, you think about it. I mean, he just playing playground football, Percy Harvin could just go one way, gone. No one's going to be able to stay with him. So, I think it's going to be interesting.
One of the things that Darrell Bevel has done this preseason that's been kind of interesting is they've gone to a lot of running read option looks with trip sets to one side. And at first it was an interesting, why do I keep seeing that? And then I started looking at what the defense is doing. Was when the Seahawks would push 3 wide receivers to one side, well, the free safety would go stand over there with the 3 receivers, which gets them out of the center of the field. And so the strong safety would back up and be deeper. And then by running a read option look, you're taking a linebacker that will then step outside in the direction where Wilson's going to go on a scrape exchange type thing. And what you're setting up is 6 blockers on 6 defenders on the inside with Lynch. So as long as one of the defenders doesn't get, one of the blockers, one of the offensive linemen doesn't just get flat beat by a defender, Lynch is basically running free up the middle. And it was working and working and working. And then you see teams start to shift and adjust and bring extra guys in the middle. And then that's when Wilson goes around the outside, or that 44-yard touchdown play by Pryor was on that same look 2 weeks ago. It's just this thing that the Seahawks have done. It's this nice little wrinkle that we didn't see a year ago, because teams have to respect all that speed at wide receiver. And it's just opening things up for everybody.
Yeah, I get giddy. I'm giddy right now. I gotta cool myself down. Maybe a cold water bath. ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Okay, let's get into Cliff Avril here. 6-year vet, obviously 2nd year with the Hawks. He's been a sack machine out in Detroit. He obviously had some very good years. 11 in 2011, 9.5 2012. He had 8 last year with us. Michael Bennett was on this morning with the 710 guys talking about how he just thinks Cliff's going to have a monster year. I'm agreeing with that. I think he's just been hard to block in general in camp, and 2, he's been dynamic in the game so far. What's your read on what's the sky the limit? Is the sky the limit for Cliff Avril in 2014?
It's really hard for me to say that he is going to be that much better than he's been in the past, because he was actually really good last year. And people don't realize that, because you look at his stats and you go, 8 sacks, it's not that much. But then you realize that he didn't play every down. He was a rotational guy who came in. He was a situational pass rusher, so he didn't get a lot of snaps. And if he had been a full-time starter, we're talking a guy that would have gotten 14, 15 sacks. When you compare it's basically his sacks or his plays per sack. He was on that piece had he been a full-time player, but he wasn't, because the Seahawks defensive line was so deep. Now you're going to put him in a role where he's going to get all those extra snaps. He's going to put up some really big numbers, but those extra numbers doesn't necessarily mean he's playing better. It's just meaning he's getting more opportunities. He was already playing at a really high level last year.
It was pretty evident to me he got better also as the year went on, because I think he felt more comfortable with the rotation. kind of like, the baseball adage of sitting on the bench, for as a DH. You got to stay in the mindset. But when you're in there every play, it's a little easier. In football, I can understand running on and off the field. That could be a little difficult. Is seeing that Cliff Avril has this potential in him, do you think, how much better do you think it will make the rest of this line? And talking about the defensive line, maybe some specifics. Obviously, we know how Michael Bennett's going to be utilized, inside and outside, depending on passing or rushing downs. But who are some of these other guys that you think could be impact players? Some of these redshirt guys, maybe potentially like a Greg Scruggs, Tony McDaniels, the guys that not everyone out there has maybe heard of.
Well, you mentioned Tony McDaniel. He was, a starter. He's kind of the run stuffing 3-tech. I think his role is not going to change much. The team will use him in the Red Bryant role at the 5-tech on short yards, 3rd and 1 or goal line, where you see teams going with heavy packages and trying to pound it in. They're done with him over into that Red Bryant role and let him manhandle offensive tackle if he's dealing with speed rush guy. Brandon Mebane is Brandon Mebane. He's not going anywhere. He's still one of the best nose tackles in the game. Greg Scruggs is really kind of a wild card. He was a defensive end coming in, and he was really a Michael Bennett clone, although, younger and his technique wasn't nearly as good. He's put on a bunch of weight without looking like he put on a bunch of weight. He's just bulked up over the last couple of years, and he looks like he could be explosive. I actually have really high expectations for him, perhaps too high. Who knows? I might end up disappointed by the end of the year. I think he's going to be really good on the inside. I think he's going to push Tony McDaniel for playing time at that 3-tech spot, and he, will. To me, he's going to be good. The real thing when you're looking at this defense or the defensive line, trying to figure out how good they're going to be, is who plays what was the Cliff Avril role last year. That pass rushing specialist who comes in the nickel and comes in from the opposite side of the Leo position, which is where Avril's going to be playing this year. Who's that other guy? There's a couple different people vying for that spot. O'Brien Schofield and Benson Mayoa. I'm pretty sure that Schofield's going to get the nod. He's going to get the snaps and stuff early on. He's just been better in camp and better in the games, and he's been better against ones, against the opposing team starters than Mayoa's been against backups. But that doesn't mean Mayoa's been bad. Mayoa's been. I was never a huge fan of his last year just because people tend to really get on his bandwagon, even though a lot of his stuff was against guys who weren't in the league once rosters were cut down. But he's definitely improved, and it looks much better this year. Those two guys coming off the end opposite Avril, to me, that's going to determine whether this defense is elite in a way like it was last year, where they just led the defense to a Super Bowl championship, or whether they struggle at times and whether they have a hard time getting off the field on 3rd down because of an inconsistent pass rush and that kind of stuff. It's really going to depend on getting that pressure opposite of Avril so that the quarterbacks tend to slide away from the pressure a lot. So, and we won't know. Both of those guys are unknowns as far as regular season production at this point. So it's going to be really interesting against the Packers to see just how well that works out.
Well, we'll come right out of the gates quick and find out, as you said, against the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. So, it's going to be all hands on deck to beat them. We've gone a little late, so I just want to make sure. Are you okay sticking around for another 5 minutes?
Sure, I'm okay.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you again for being on. You really are one of the best out there, and I appreciate it. The show benefits tremendously. Let's talk about my favorite, and I'm maybe being sarcastic when I say this, but my personal favorite National Football writer man on the street, really the man of the NFL. I'm surprised they don't have him, give him an award or some type of wrestling belt to wear everywhere. Peter King, and what he said. This article that was written yesterday that as part of his Monday morning quarterback column, which I read because I think it's important, obviously, to stay aware of what's going on around everywhere, and you rarely see tidbits of Seattle in there. But he went ahead and again he used this word. You're talking about somebody who's maybe writing an opine piece or maybe more of a column. It's is he talking fact? Is he just making his own revelations or what? But to say that the Seattle Seahawks, as dominant as they are, will not be, quote unquote, the win it all this year because stuff happens. Now, I gotta know, Keith, is stuff happens a credible excuse for a team failing?
Okay, I gotta address that question carefully because I actually I've worked with Peter. He's actually a really good guy, and even though he's a Patriots fan and it makes no excuses about that, I feel he does a good job of putting his fandom aside and being honest about his analysis. But in this particular case, to me, just to say stuff happens comes off as lazy. Because yes, stuff does happen to teams. But what stuff could happen? And to me, that's what was missing, and that's what I think needs to be said. Seattle's defense last year was one of the best you'll see, probably the best since the '85 Bears. And it was also really healthy. Very few guys missed time due to injury. I mean, Bobby Wagner missed some time in the middle of the season, and it really showed in those games against the Rams and the Bucks. The run defense, and sure they missed Brandon Browner down the stretch because of his suspension and injury, but that really didn't matter because they had such great depth, and the depth isn't quite as strong in the secondary this year as it was last year, and so the team was extremely healthy. So you go, okay, are they going to be? Because injuries are a part of it. Some of that's just luck. Are they going to be that lucky and be that healthy all year? Probably not. To me, if you go through and you go, okay, well, yes, stuff happens. You need to be able to say what stuff if you're going to make that claim. Yes, it's just there is a trend where the Super Bowl winners don't repeat. Well, repeating in the NFL is hard. Winning one in the NFL is hard, but that doesn't mean that the team can't do it. It just means that the other teams haven't. And statistically, it's not as if you're it's not 0% probability for the Seahawks to repeat. They are still the league's deepest roster, and they're still probably the team the fastest.
Speed is just crazy on this roster. You still have Russell Wilson at quarterback. Just automatically say, okay, we're not going to count the Seahawks. We're just going to automatically pencil in someone else because of stuff happens. To me, I don't get it. To me, that just doesn't feel like good. Great analysis.
To me, it was a Skip Bayless move, is what it was. It was, it was like what you said. Lazy is the exact right way to describe it, and it's not something that I would expect out of Peter King. Even if I might disagree with what he says, he's going to at least try to back it up with something factual. And I thought it was. I mean, he said all the things you mentioned, which was how good this team is, how fast, how deep they are. They're just clearly better than everybody else to the eye and everything, and on paper. But to just say stuff happens, I thought it was a slap in the face to what Pete and this organization has built, because it is special. They have done it differently, and I think that needs to be talked about. I think that should be recognized. But regardless, I mean, there's other guys like Pete Prisco. I won't get into that now because we've run a little late. But I think Peter King, that's what I just say, that he didn't, by not recognizing the difference in how they've done it, I think it was a little bit of a slap in the face to the organization to say it that way. Well, let's before we get to go, let's talk about the NFC West. There's been a lot of injuries, to say the least, that to say help the Seahawks out, I think it's an understatement, especially when you bring up names like Bradford and Dockett and Navarro Bowman, not back probably till, I think, closer to the end of the season than the middle. What's your read so far on this division now, where it sits now as opposed to 3 or 4 weeks ago, and do we reign supreme? Is the difference in teams that much different than it was 3 weeks ago?
I don't think it's really that much different. Sam Bradford's a big name, but his play on the field isn't that much better than his backups. So they don't really, it's not that huge step down that you'd expect it to be, losing a so-called franchise quarterback. The strength of that team is still their defensive line, and those players aren't going anywhere. So I think the Rams are just as dangerous now, maybe a little less so, but not this not going to be this drastic effect. Losing Dockett is going to really hurt that Arizona team. That's a team with some interesting holes and some other interesting places where they've got really high-end talent. And Dockett was one of those pieces that made some of their other stuff work because of his. He's not necessarily a well-liked guy in Seattle because he's got kind of a history, but he's a very, very good player, and you're just that defense is going to lose a lot not having him. Navarro Bowman's probably the best player of those three. He, in my mind, he's the best middle linebacker in the NFL, and I know that's not necessarily a popular opinion, but he to me he's that good, and you could make a case that he's the best linebacker in the NFL. So losing him, it's huge, and there's no depth that's going to replace him. But at the same time, San Francisco's front seven is got enough talent around that spot to continue to hold its own, even without him. And now, if he misses most of the year, like you were saying, comes back, closer to the end of the year, that defense is gonna struggle because they don't have the depth that they used to, and it looks like they may also be without Aldon Smith for some time.
I always always got to say that every time.
With both of those guys gone, that defense is. It's just not what it was last year or the year before. I know it's preseason and it doesn't really mean that much, but man, that defense has looked old and slow I guess it was their first 2 preseason games. They looked better this last week, but still not the dominant, just in-your-face physical defense that they were in the past this last week. But they did look better. It comes down to, will San Francisco make the changes they need to make on offense to make up for a lessened defense? And if they can't or they don't, if they're too stubborn to, then that team's going to struggle. They're not struggle like, early picking in the draft struggle, but struggle in terms of not really pushing Seattle for the division. I do kind of expect San Francisco to take a step back this season. Not a huge one. Not like, we're not talking like a 6-win team, but a 9-win team, maybe a 10-win team. Get into the playoffs as a wild card, rather than a 12-win pushing for a division and possibly a first-round bye like they did have been the last couple of years. So I just expect them to take a small step back, and I don't have a lot of confidence in Arizona. I like their coaching staff, but their defensive talent has eroded, especially with Dockett gone and their linebacking core. So their front seven just isn't going to scare anybody, and so I don't have a lot of faith in Arizona to push and do the type of thing that they did last year, where they were pushing for a playoff spot down the stretch. So it really comes down to, can the Rams ride their defense into contention, maybe the way that Seattle did a year ago. And we'll see. I can tell you that defense is going to be scary. So, they have a chance to. The offense has to come together and not make mistakes, and they have to be able to manage games and score enough points to pick up some wins. But I think the Rams could be the toughest team of the three right now. But we'll see. I thought they were going to take a step forward last year, and they didn't. So.
Well, that defense is extremely talented. There's no doubt in anyone's mind where they stand. It's just, are they the team that's on the field the entire time? Can the offense stay on the field? That's going to be the question. I know we're super late. I know we've gone way over, but just 20 seconds here. I just, and again, this isn't a societal commentary or anything like that, but based on what Michael Sam has done, he's got a couple sacks, but he's apparently in an absolute dead heat, or might not even be a dead heat with another player, and actually an undrafted player that plays that similar position, who's also maybe a little more versatile. Do you think Michael Sam's going to make the 53-man for the Rams?
I'm kind of torn. I thought it was set and that he was gonna make it, because it's not just his defensive stuff, but he'll play defense, and he'll is out there on the punt team and the punt coverage team, and is willing to do those things and put in the effort, because special teams is really about effort more than anything. And he's a guy that has that. He'll work on every down, effort. I really thought he was going to make it, but then, the coach came out and said that it was going to be based on defense and not special teams. And I go, well, let's reevaluate. And I'm not sure. It's going to be close. And I do think that even if he doesn't make the Rams 53, I think he'll get picked up on waivers. I don't think he'll be employed or unemployed. I don't think that's going to happen. The moment he gets cut, someone's going to put a claim in for him, because he's shown he can play, and there were other questions, but whether or not he was athletic enough and had a quick enough first step to make it in the NFL was the football question on him, and I think he's shown that he has enough to play. So I think he'll get his chance.
Well, Keith, thank you again for staying on a little later. We literally have about a minute left in the show, but I'm going to stay on to finish out my list of topics for the on-demand segment. But thank you again, Keith Myers. You can find Keith at Myers NFL on Twitter, MYERS NFL. Anywhere else? Anything else you want to add to social sites or where people can follow what you're doing and up to right now, Keith?
No, Twitter's the best place to find me. If people want to talk, that's the best place. I am currently looking at different options as far as where I'm going to be publishing my column this season, and I will let everyone know on Twitter when that decision has been made. So.
Awesome. Well, let me know. I'll get it out on my site, 12for12s.com. And really, I appreciate the not only the work you do, but the insight you give and being on the program tonight. Like I said, you're one of the best out there.
Thanks a lot.
All righty, folks. That was Keith Myers. Thank you again, Keith. I really appreciate you being on. And to everybody out there, again, it's going to go off on live, but we will be on demand. And anyone that's listening or called in, you'll still be able to listen to the rest of the show. That was really a good segment. I really appreciate what Keith brought to the table. There was a lot of good stuff there. I hope everyone enjoyed it. But I do need to do a couple things. One, I need to take a break, but I also need to give a shout-out to one of my sponsors, and really in this case the sponsor is our network here, Double Overtime. Tune in every day of the week now. We've got a show for you. whether it's Battle of the Fans, which has just been doing fantastic, Fourth and Short, Sports Nerd Show with TJ, which I just did. I was a guest on this last Saturday, or Sunday, I should say, talking Doctor Who. That was a lot of fun. And, I'm a Doctor Who guy. I'm a Whovian, so believe it or not. But, yeah, it's just a lot of good things happening here with the network, and I hope everyone out there is enjoying it. You can read about all of it on doubleovertime.com. You can also, doubleovertimeradio.com, but you can also check out all the links off of 12for12s.com. I have links to all the different shows when they're out. You can always listen to them on demand via those links. Doing a lot of great things. So, again, thank you to everyone that does support us, does listen to us, and, feel free to let someone else know about us. I think there's some decent stuff out there, and we are aiming to please. All right, I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. I'm going to get into the rest of the Hawks 12 and finish out. But otherwise, a fantastic segment there with Keith Myers. Thanks again for being on. And this is 12 for 12's Radio. Your host, Paul Beyer. We'll be right back.
If you haven't got problems, I feel bad for your son. I got 99 problems and a bitch ain't one. Tip my hat to the sun in the west. Feel the beat right in my chest. At the crossroads the second time. Make the devil change his mind. Pound of flesh, but it's really a ton. 99 problems and a bitch ain't one. If you haven't got problems, I feel bad for your son. I got 99 problems and a bitch ain't one. 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. Well, you can come inside, but your friends can't come. 99 problems and a bitch ain't one. If you haven't got problems, I feel bad for your son. 99 problems and a bitch ain't one. I got 99.
So tell me if what you're about to hear doesn't make you think of one particular player on this roster. The Seahawks roster, that is.
So good, I can't maneuver. Stay on target. We're too close. Stay on target. Loosen up!
Did you get the joke? I hope you did. Lock on Lockett. Ricardo Lock on Lockett. This guy he's Darth Vader, all right? I mean, come on, folks. Let's just be real here. Ricardo Lockett has made this team no questions asked. He might be the best gunner in the league. I thought Jeremy Lane was, but he's a decapitation machine. I mean, it's unbelievable what Ricardo Lockett is doing. And I am now saying, and I'm going to now be out there publicizing, promoting, that we now call Ricardo Lockett Lock on Lockett. I mean, come on, doesn't it just make sense? Right when I thought of it, I heard the stay on target, the Star Wars moment, because, I mean, the guy is just homing on that punt receiver, that punt returner, and it is lights out. It's a complete difference maker, and he's the best in the league. Not a question in my mind. I mean, if you can make, and I think that's what we talked about Michael Sam a second ago, Keith and I. If you think of how you can be a difference maker on special teams, there's not an NFL roster that you won't make in this league. It's just a fact. And it's been from Don Beebe down the line. There's, historically speaking, there's been guys that are lifelong special teamers that make a living in the NFL, and it's because they know how to make a difference. Ricardo Lockett has found a home, and he is unbelievable. We can't afford to lose that guy. I'm telling you that right now. All right, well, that is the end of the show, folks. I thank you, everyone. Keith Myers, obviously, for showing up and being on for some time. It was a great discussion we had. Before I get into my final shout-outs, I want to mention, again, the Build the Tip. We have 9 days left, folks, in this crowdfunding campaign. I wrote yesterday, last night, actually, a very, I hope, quick, easy summary of why this is so important. And I just want to read this to you. And this is what I wrote last night, by the way. I want to break this down easy, 12s. We have a little less than 10 days left before our crowdfunding Indiegogo project comes to an end. Many have given openly. Many have voiced their concerns with either timing, location, and or design. I get it. I really do. The thing is, the 12th man, 12th lady, and rest of Hawks Nation are currently unable to enjoy a permanent fixture that embodies our fandom. We must be one of only a handful of NFL teams without just such a monument. So why not build the tip? This isn't about a player. It isn't even about the team. It's about that moment when all of us at once knew we were going to the Super Bowl. It's a celebration of a feeling, one that I try to recapture daily. I can't be the only one. A grassroots group of everyday people from all different backgrounds found one another as part of this dream to erect a physical representation of that feeling. Come join us at Build the Tip in this initiative. We're all in this together. Build the Tip, www.buildthetip.com. Please go there. Please visit it. We're close to 30,000, but we have a long, long way to go. And trust me, even if we don't make it, folks, we're not stopping, okay? I said this to someone today on Facebook. This project, this statue is going to take, first of all, a year to make. This isn't like we're going to wheel this out in a weekend, okay? But the sculptor, Kevin Patel, who has done many, many things like this around the area, this is real deal Holyfield professional. Every single one of us, we have said the same thing, which is it means, as much as it means to me, in this statue and what it is, it's yours just as much. Whether you give or not, I mean this. This statue is yours just as much as all of ours, okay? And that's the 12th spirit. That's what we're about. So know that this is a good, right, just thing that we're doing here, and I hope you can see that as well. Build the Tip, www.buildthetip.com. Thanks again to Keith Myers for joining me tonight. Follow Keith on Twitter again at MyersNFL. That's MyersNFL. Thank you to all those that listened live. Again, I appreciate all of you, as well as any of those that listen to On Demand. The show obviously going about 15, 20 minutes over. You're the people that make this happen and keep me going. I really do appreciate all of the support. 9 days now to the season opener, folks, against the Green Bay Packers. The clock just keeps on ticking. I can't wait. Check out all the past shows. Again, they have some great episodes. Norm Kawili, Tim Weaver from Cover 32, Chris Bauer and Joe Michaels from Build the Tip. Fantastic interview with them, as well as Jason Coyner, the gentleman, the man, the maid, Madden 15, which came out today, folks, made that happened with EA Sports to get that Legion of Boom inside the game, at least inside the game. It was absolutely fantastic, even though Richard Sherman is the only man on the cover. Thank you again to everybody, as well as Megan Granito from NFLFemale.com. That was a fantastic. Jamie McCole, Football Girl, all those have been great interviews and well received. Megan's work, I know, is going to be out on NFL Female throughout the season, so check that out. For all those listening, support of the shows, again, you can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, the Facebook page for the site. Again, my Facebook, my Twitter is @pbizzle, P-B-I-Z-Z-E-L, Facebook, Paul Beyer. You can also have a new Twitter account there for 12 for 12's radio. Again, very easy, 12FOR, 12S radio, and that's the @ on Twitter. Facebook, Paul Beyer and 12 for 12's radio. Again, retweet, like everything we do, as well as everything I do on YouTube. I obviously put together the weekly interview and commentary and put it out on YouTube for those that like that. And there are people, I get many views on there, and I appreciate all of that. But do retweet, share, or like anything that I do send out. I appreciate all your help. Thanks to Phoebes, Rachel, Joseph, Tina, the entire Double Overtime gang, Jen, Tay, Barry, Tim, all of your help and effort. I do appreciate it. It does a lot of amazing things. It keeps this thing rolling. Shout out to all the Texas Subway guys listening to the show on TuneIn Radio. You guys are fantastic. Keep it happening. I'm currently completing, an update of the website. So if some of you are seeing some old posts and articles being sent out on Twitter or Facebook, just check them out. But they're automatically being sent out from my website. That's just the way I have the settings up. And don't worry if it's, again, like I said, 6 months old. Get the latest, again, on everything I do at 12for12s.com. That's my website, 12FOR, 12S.com. And follow me at all the places I mentioned before. I'm sending out updates 3 to 4 times a day on Twitter, and that big one I do send out in the middle of the day or in the morning. I try to do it on Facebook. Please, again, like, retweet, share, all that stuff above. You can find 12 for 12s as well as all the other shows on Double Overtime on Stitcher, Xbox, Music Zune, iTunes, and TuneIn Radio. Please, on iTunes and TuneIn Radio, we need your help in reviewing and rating the show. Whether you like it or not, just rate and review our shows. Please take just 30 seconds to do that on iTunes and TuneIn Radio. We very much would appreciate it. It helps us with people seeing our show more in the listings. Thank you very much for all of that. Tune in to Double Overtime tomorrow with Tim, Barry, and myself. It's our 100th episode. Can you believe that? 100 episodes in the books, folks. Our flagship show on the network here. We're going to be obviously talking Mariners, talking Seahawks, the whole thing. Mariners right now enjoying starting a 6-game homestand yesterday. Right now currently up 5-0 on the Texas Rangers, which is a good news. So hopefully we can get even in this series like I mentioned before. Go M's. Good night, folks. This has been a great show, long show, but one I think that you'll definitely enjoy listening to 12 for 12s. I appreciate all your support. Again, hosted by me, Paul Beyer. OTAs, I'm saying OTAs. OTAs, that was a long time ago. Well, let's always, like we do, got to up the irons. We always finish this show with the old Iron Maiden. So let's find what's a good song we haven't played in quite some time. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, well, we've played a lot of good ones. Played The Prisoner last week. How about, we're going into the black hole, aren't we, folks? How about Fear of the Dark? This is Iron Maiden, Up the Irons. 12 for 12's Radio, Paul Beyer, signing off. See you next week. Go Hawks.
Fear of the dark. I have a constant fear that something's always near. Fear of the dark. Fear of the dark. I have a phobia that someone's always there.
When you're searching for the light,
know, it's really always special for me to end the show with a little Iron Maiden. They are a great band that isn't just heavy metal, rock, crazy stuff. They've got some great ballads in there, and that's one of their good ones, Fear of the Dark. But I know this team has no fear of the dark in the black hole going into Oakland this Thursday, just 2 days away from now. But we'll wrap up this preseason. Again, thank you to everyone. This is 12 for 12's Radio. Your host, Paul Beyer, done for another week. Show 46, 4 more, and I'll be at 50. Wow. Thank you to everybody out there. Have a wonderful evening. See you next week. Go Hawks.